wrestling if you're ready to care. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only WETOODEEP. Turn it up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is slapping me, yes, slapping me.
What is up, everybody? It is your boy WETOODEEP, the one and only, and we're here with another episode of the Slapping Me to Wrestling a podcast. I know all of you listeners, new or the day ones, are wondering where is this podcast at this week, and let's just say it's been an interesting week. So Tuesday, was supposed to be like a backlash review show, right? I'm gonna be honest with you. With the way this week is going, I completely forgot Backlash was on Sunday, which is a great reason why I did my Backlash instant thoughts on Saturday night, Sunday morning, whenever I posted it. And so Tuesday was supposed to be like a Backlash review show, but little did I remember Tuesday was my little brother's birthday, and we went out to celebrate with him. So that's why I didn't record. And then, well, we're going to jump into the housekeeping here in a minute. Before we jump into that, go to the links in the description. Join our Discord page. That's where the community begins and the conversation thrives. We're going to start doing watch-alongs, start doing, with Raw, with SmackDown. Maybe the AEW boys will be in there during Dynamite and start talking about it. Who knows? As we grow this community. So the first thing that I want to ask is share the Discord, make all the links you want to make. Share this thing out. Get people in the wrestling community in here. But then let's also grow the follower count, the subscriber count here. Share the podcast, whether it's the audio, whichever your friends, your family, your coworkers, anyone that mentions wrestling to you. If they mention it, let them know. And then if you want to support, definitely not a have to, but if you would like to support by buying merchandise, I wish I had some to offer to show you what it looked like. Because I ordered some. I will tell you, expect very long shipping time, because I ordered it about a month ago, and I ordered 2 shirts. Y'all know I like to drink while I podcast. Might as well get the mug that's on the website, right? And then I bought like a sticker to put on the back of the car, right? The logo sticker. Well, the only thing I have is the logo sticker. So expect the t-shirts and all the other things that have to be printed on demand. I emailed them, and they said they are basically packed with orders, which may just be an excuse, but who knows? That's not what we're here for, right? But if you want to buy the merch, slappingmewrestling.com is where you can get that merchandise. So with all of that out of the way, right? We're gonna do some housekeeping with the show, right? So we'll start with this. After a lot of thought, like this was something that seemed, if you're in the Discord already, this sort of seemed like it came out of left field. But I want to just assure everyone, if they're in the Discord, if you're a long-term listener, when you hear this was months of thinking, right? And figuring out, is this what is this just like, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't, my number one reason why I started this podcast was for me, right? To have a place to vent, to vocalize, and really didn't think I would get any type of audience, if anyone would ever listen. This has never been a money-making scheme to me, because I have this principle that I sort of live by in business, that in order to make money you have to spend money. But I don't have money to spend on the podcast to like market this, to get mass appeal in the market that is so heavily dense. Podcasting in general, when it first started like 10 or 15 years ago, the idea of someone sitting down outside of being part of big radio, right, to get on Sirius XM or whatever, outside of being on the radio, for someone, just some normal person, to just sit down and record, and we called it podcasting. Like when that started, most of the big names were the guys who were in radio that were sort of getting away from radio or something like that, right? And then all of a sudden you started getting services like Anchor that offered free podcast hosting, to where you could even do it on your phone. And so what ended up happening was like everybody and their mother started a podcast. And so podcasting in general is a very dense place. Like everyone has a podcast. There's a podcast about everything, right? Which I think is great, because it's so many different opinions, so many different points of view, so many different different ways to think about a topic. And eventually you'll find one that you'll fit into if that's something you do, right? I'm not the biggest podcast listener, mainly because I don't necessarily like, I listen to stuff mainly when I'm in the car, and I'm a music person, right? I love, like, in the car, you know, car in the car, karaoke, play the music, and we're going to jam out to it while we're driving to work, because that's how I sort of get myself ready for the day. So I'm not necessarily a podcast person, right? You really have to be special as a podcaster. Like, I know I'll watch clips, right? I'll watch clips of podcasts every now and then. But if you really have to have really good content, if I'm going to listen to you, especially if it's sort of long form content, like hour plus, like I'm going to do today, right? So this was something that, no, let me finish that point. Let me finish that, what I was saying. So wrestling, or excuse me, podcasting in general is already sort of a crowded market. But then when you look at the subgenre of wrestling podcasts, and you got, and when there's tiers to this, right? You have your big podcast, your in the business experienced type podcast, your Undertakers, your Cornettes, stuff like that, right? Then you have like your influencer podcast, and you got some very good ones, like Chris Van Vliet, JD from NY is top 30 podcast, right? Sal the Monster, I'm trying to think of other ones, you know, Santi, Wheezy Blonde, right? Guys like that, or guys and girls like them. And then so that's your like top tier. And then you have like your middle tier people, more so, you know, your basic TikTokers, right? That maybe have a following, maybe not on charts, but because maybe they're doing it on Twitch or solely on YouTube, and so they don't get on the charts because the charts don't include those. And then you have a podcast like mine that had, you know, what I call the startups, and there's a lot of startup level, especially in wrestling, podcasts that have, you know, 100 or 200 subscribers on their YouTube channel and stuff like that, right? And so this is a dense, a very dense and crowded market to work in with a wrestling podcast. And I knew that when I got into it. It's even more so now, but I knew that when I got into doing this, that I may not have a listener base. And so to me, what I really wanted to do was create a place that stood out from the rest of wrestling podcasts, right? Because essentially what my product is what I'm saying into the mic, right? 99% of all wrestling podcasts, I guarantee you, during this week had a Backlash review show, right? So we're selling the same content essentially, or the same, right? What's different in what I wanted to create was a place that was actual conversation that went deeper than the surface level, so that you guys can hear a point of view that's more than just, that surface level clickbaity type review that a lot of I Feel Wrestling podcasts do. But I also didn't want it to feel super like in the wrestling bubble Cornette style, where he made it like you have to be a super hardcore fan of wrestling, especially of the type of wrestling Cornette loves to listen to Cornette, right? And you have to be in that bubble. That opinion is the wrestling bubble sort of opinion, right? And so after all of this thinking about where the podcast started, where it's gone, and what I really wanted this to become, right? I like I said, I first launched this with the idea of just to have a space where I could just, talk, let loose, give raw, unfiltered opinion on wrestling, and really just for me to have a place to vocalize what I thought of the product, right? Right. And so that's what the first 2 seasons were, right? The first 37 episodes for season 1. Like I said, we did like 100, close to 100 episodes season 2. And then on season 3, that was last season, I brought DJ Wavy D in. And bringing, like, don't get me wrong, adding him as a co-host was a great chapter in the podcast. I had fun every Tuesday. It was a blast working with him. We built something unique. But over time, what was unique, and I mean, I know I've heard people say that they love those episodes. For me, it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. It was just it started to transform away from what I wanted the podcast to be, which was I want to rant. And because of how I rant and because of the nature of ranting in general, where it is on the spot, you don't know what you're going to say type thing, right? I felt that the running the Tuesday show with Wavy D, I had to hold back as a way to maintain a dialogue, right? There's an art to podcasting. When you have a co-host, the ability to dialogue and maintain that dialogue is so much different than just sitting on the mic solo. And there's a reason why a lot of podcasters who really don't have that ability to hold dialogue type conversations go solo. And it's not that I don't have the ability to do it. It's just that I don't necessarily think that I enjoyed those Tuesday episodes as much. There was a lot of planning that went into them. And I'll just be honest. There would be some episodes where I would walk away from recording, and as it was uploading, and me thinking about the podcast and thinking, that was one of the greatest episodes we ever did. And then like 2 weeks later thinking, man, I don't know if I like doing this. Like, because, and it's going to come off a little selfish. It's at the end of the day, I really wanted to have a place that was fun for me. I felt like I was holding back on what was fun, right? That energy and chaos and the freedom to go off and chase some rabbits down the rabbit trail. So saying all of that, this was posted in the Discord, and I'm taking this time to explain it. I am going to go back to just WETOODEEP solo episodes from here on out. Officially starting next Tuesday on the episode, it will just be me for the near future. Who knows how long? Maybe in a year or so, or in 6 months or so. Now the plan is still to have Wavy D on the podcast at some point. What I mean by that is, if I want to do like a SummerSlam prediction extravaganza and bring some people in, because that's what I'm also looking to do, is bringing in people. Like I said, I was in a podcast promotion type Twitter chat, and we're working on trying to maybe bring some of those people in. And so if I wanted to do like a get together with a bunch of different creators, Wavy D would definitely be on that list that I would ask, hey, bro, do you want to come on? Right. I still want to bring Steel Chair Twan back. Right. Definitely Wavy D is going to be on the end of the year podcast where we go over the award show. Right. Right. Because this wasn't like a decision that was just like, I'm just going to go ahead and kick Wavy. I've been thinking about this for a while. And there were some things that have happened, again, that we'll discuss here in a minute. Housekeeping is going to be a long part of this episode, by the way, if you haven't figured that out yet, right? I'm grateful for everything he brought to the team. He brought a very unique, a very unique opinion and perspective to wrestling, and he challenged me at times, right? And that's what I wanted. I wanted these conversations that were challenging, that were actual conversations. Right. I didn't want the shallow. I wanted the deep conversations, right? But I really, to me, just wanted to get back to what I started with Slapping Meat as a brand and as a podcast. And again, I'm not doing this for money, so it's not really a brand, but in a way it is, right? And so I wanted to get back to that. I didn't want a gimmick. I didn't, right? This is just going to be me on the mic letting loose on my opinion, right? And so with that, we're going to strip back the podcast, no fillers, no real expectation of what's going to be said, just me, this microphone, and you all, the listeners. Right? So I hope you all continue to rock with me on this journey. Right? If you've ever vibed with one of my rants, ever laughed, shouted in agreement, or even in disagreement, then you already know what's coming, right? We're going back to that raw slapping me energy that started it all. So again, thank you all for sticking with me, for supporting, for listening. This next chapter, I'm gonna promise 3 things with this next chapter. That's what I'm gonna dive into next. Just take a moment to promise you 3 things that this podcast is going to be about going forward. It's actually the 3 R's, right? I'm going to call it the 3 R's. It's the title of this podcast, right? This is going to be the foundation, the standard, the code that the show is going to be built on from this point forward. So the first one, real. I will always and have always given you and will continue to give you the real me, the best of who I am. No fake personas, no gimmicks, no clickbait. What you hear on the podcast is who I am, what I believe. Because this isn't about chasing views or making headlines. To me, this podcast is going to be about having real, honest, thought out conversations that matter. Whether you agree or not, you know that this will come from, every single word that I say will come from a place of authenticity. I'm not faking none of this. This isn't for money. This isn't for clout. This isn't for clicks. Second, raw. The show's going to be raw. It's going to be a little edgy. It's going to be a little messy sometimes. What it won't be is sugar-coated. I'm not going to sit here and package all my rants up in pretty little bows and to try to bring in the clicks or try to get a sponsorship or fit in with some trend. Because I'd rather tell you the truth and wrestle with some tough topics and water anything down at all. That's just how I always have been, right? Nothing will be edited. If something gets said, it will stay on the podcast. And if I say something wrong, I will correct it. Right? Right. That's just how it's going to be, right? So if you're looking for something that's polished, looks like it came from a marketing team that's super edited, that has transitions and all of that stuff. If you're looking for all of that, I'm telling you right now, this is not that place. But if what you care about isn't the flashiness of the editing and the substance that's actually coming from my mouth, and you want something honest, unfiltered, and from the heart, well, then Slapping Meat Wrestling Podcast, this podcast, is the place where you need to be. In the third, my goal is to be relevant. What do I mean by that? Everything that was going to take place on this podcast will be relevant to the world of wrestling. I'm not going to waste your time with any sidebars or fluff or any of, a million other topics that could be said here. We're not going to cover any sports. We're not going to cover any, pop culture. This will be pure wrestling on this podcast. It's going to be about what's happening now, the moments, the matches, the stories. If it's moving the needle in wrestling, we're going to talk about it. It's as simple as that. Now, what do I mean by the word wrestling? I mean the wrestling business, the industry known as pro wrestling. So if it's happening in AEW, we may touch on it. If it's happening in WWE, we'll touch on it. If it's happening in TNA, we'll touch on it. If it's big news in the world of wrestling, we'll touch on it. I may bring up some indie match or something like that, WWID type match or something like, right? If it's in wrestling, we will talk about it, right? So now that we got that out of the way, what I promise for this podcast will be what I want the standard to be: real, raw, and relevant. So with that being said, we'll transition into something that has happened in the last week. I'm going to try to keep it as professional as can be. But like I just said, I'm going to keep it honest. There's an elephant in the room, in the Discord. I kind of already mentioned this. Again, saying come watch the episode, I'll explain it. There's an elephant in the room. There's an elephant in the community right now, right? And I'm not going to sugarcoat around this. I'm just going to tell you exactly what I feel, right? There's going to be, just for the sake of respect, I'm not going to say anything more than what I've already pre-written. This was pre-written, by the way, because I wanted to make sure that I said what was on my mind without doing too much, right? And so a lot of y'all listening, a lot of y'all that are my day one listeners of Slapping Meat Wrestling, and have been on this journey with me, the B-Masters, the Karas, Starry Night Sky, Witters, people like that, my day ones, right? A lot of y'all are in the CWC casual wrestling community. And I was at one time as well. Now, that's been a bumpy ride over what we started that Mania 38, I believe, was when I joined around that time, right? So we're 3-4 years into it at this point. It's been a bumpy ride for those 4 years. For me, at least, because of the type of person that I am and how I like to have conversations, right? So I thought that space was built upon the idea of having real conversation and being able to have the ability of free speech, right? And I don't mean this in a place. That's what I thought, and here's why I thought it. Because you could even go back as far as, I would even say this week, on the podcast, and he would get on there and be, if you want a place where you could share your opinions, blah blah blah, and have and it was he would get on the microphone and he would market this as a there's no opinion off limits type environment, right? And that's what I thought this was, that this was a place for wrestling fans to share opinions without having to walk on the eggshells that happen in a lot of these IWC Discord pages or on Twitter, where if your opinion doesn't match the opinion of the majority, then you have to walk on eggshells. And so this place, when I first got into it and this was really building, I thought the idea was just, this was just a place to shoot the shit and have conversation. Right. And I was told, and I'm going to be blatantly honest with you, right? I was told that that's not the intention, that the intention was for this to be a place where it's like you're sitting at the bar. Now, that's a great way to run a podcast. I'm not going to sit and deny it and run a Discord group and all that, right? I'm not going to sit here and deny it. I don't know how many bars that the host of this show has been to where I've had some really deep conversations at bars with people. I'm going to just tell you about me, right? Like, I don't go out to bars to party or to dance or to play. If I'm at a bar, I'm going there we're having conversation. Like, last time I was at a bar was with a coworker, and we sat there, we did a couple shots of Fireball, and we talked about life, and it was some deep conversation. I don't know what kind of bar talk I don't know what kind of talk this person thinks happens at bars, but there are some deep conversations that happen on bar stools. And so to me, if you wanted a conversation or an environment that was like the bar, then deep conversations happen at the bar. Now, if you wanted just a place where you could shoot the shit and not get too deep, that's not really bar talk. Maybe, right? I don't know. That's just me, right? What I've come to realize is the leader of that community isn't interested in conversation. He's interested in he's interested in control. He's trying to build a brand. He walks around, and he's doing this in every episode now. Go to his merch site, buy your Fuck the IWC merchandise. He runs around screaming on his podcast, fuck the IWC. Again, it's part of the reason why one of the last episodes that I've done, I think last Friday, was talking about how the casual wrestling community, the CWC, is part of the IWC. So I don't understand this war, right? I don't understand it, right? He's screaming to fuck the IWC like he's some anti-establishment, revolutionary, leading a resistance in some fake war that he created to save everyone in the community from the hardcore wrestling nerds on the internet. Right? Guys, guess what? He's not some revolutionary. He's not some resistance fighter leading you in some war. Not at all, right? What he is a gatekeeper. And he's wearing a mask. And I use that analogy for a reason, and I'll explain it in a minute. He's a gatekeeper wearing a mask, right? And it's funny because he complained he complained in an episode this week. And this is really where this conversation and where this happened, right? So in his Discord, he posted at one of his episodes, and I responded to it. And I think someone else posed a question about like what it is to be a fan or something like that, right? A real fan of wrestling. And I posted this response, something along the lines of what I'm about to describe to you and explain to you. We're actually going to do a segment on what does it mean to be a wrestling fan at the very end of this podcast, right? And so this is basically it's not my exact response in the Discord because I elaborate a little bit more on it here, but So what ends up happening is he makes an episode about it, complaining at the IWC and at anyone. And let's, I'm going to be completely honest. It was a shot at me. I was the only one that had this opinion in the Discord, right? Complaining about the IWC, saying he's not a real wrestling fan, but rather just a fan of WWE, which is going to be the opinion I express on this show, by the way. And again, when we get there, I'll break it down for you, right? But this isn't the first time he like took a shot at me without naming names. Because I'm just gonna be honest, right? That episode, if you watch the Casual Wrestling Podcast, and here's the first thing: I'm never gonna tell you guys not to support that podcast, right? But when his episode, he posted about Jey Uso's the guy. He brings, Jey Uso this. Well, that comes in response to a couple people in the Discord saying they're tired of Jey Uso, right? But Jey Uso's the casual's favorite because he has that TikTok appeal, that, the 30-second, we don't have to think too deep about this story type shit, right? And he's fun, and he gets the crowd bumping. But then the music turns off and Jey Uso turns into a very mediocre wrestler at best, who probably shouldn't be a champion, but that's a whole different conversation, right? So he complains about the IWC, saying he's not a real wrestling fan. He's just a WWE fan, and he cries about how that's a gatekeeping response. Meanwhile, he then turns around, and I'm not even kidding. He turns around when I post a reply to one of his other comments this week. This one was he was talking about size and how size still matters in wrestling. And in the episode, he talks about how he's tired of everyone bringing up Rey Mysterio because Rey Mysterio was larger than life. And so I respond and say, I listened to it. I understand where you're coming from. I think size still is important. But when I hear you say, stop bringing up Rey Mysterio because Rey Mysterio was larger than life, what I hear is it's not about size, it's about booking. Because booking is, what do I say? Booking is 90% of wrestling. Well, he comes back and basically says that over the last few weeks, my responses and have been would be what the IWC says. Essentially saying, he turns around and he tells me that my takes are not casual enough. Which again is why I mentioned in, I think it was last Friday's episode, that fandom is a spectrum. There is no clear definition that I can give you of what a casual fan is. It's a spectrum. Not everyone's going to be hardcore casual. Not everyone's going to be hardcore, hardcore Mark, right? Right. He thinks about it. Think about that though, right? He hates being labeled and excluded. He does the same exact thing to others. That is the definition of hypocrite. So that's why I said that he's a gatekeeper wearing a mask. And then now I just call him a hypocrite, because the origin of the word hypocrite is from Roman theater, the Roman Empire and their theater. They didn't have multiple actors, right? A lot of times in Roman theater during the Roman Empire, ancient Rome, they would have the one guy, and he would swap masks when he swapped characters. And I don't know the actual like Greek or Latin word for like the base of it. I don't know that off the top of my head, but it is the word that eventually, it's the base word or the root word for the word hypocrite. So in its original context, a hypocrite is someone who switches masks depending on the circumstance, right? This dude, all he cares about is his brand. All he cares about is right. So I would post my thoughts in his Discord, right? Different views on angles, different perspectives, a little bit deeper thought out takes, right? And now suddenly I'm the problem, right? I've been in here for, like I said, 3 or 4 years, and this is now suddenly becoming a problem just now, right? I don't buy the reason he gave me, and I'm not going to discuss our personal chat that I had with him, and very deep conversation. But essentially, it was just, hey man, I'm getting messages by people, and he said multiples. I don't care who it is. The dishonesty doesn't matter. But you're battling for attention, and you're being controversial on purpose, which is crazy because that's not at all what it is. I told him I thought this was a place where free expression existed, right? Because I've never changed, right? Anyone can attest for that. I've never changed who I was and how I think about the world of wrestling. None of my opinions really change all that often. But here's what I realized. He doesn't want opinions. He wants yes men, right? Then jumps on the mic and says all opinions are welcome. And I believe in free speech. No. You believe in your speech. The second someone thinks differently, now they're not casual enough for you. Now they're ruining the vibe of your community, right? And so what I'm saying is I'm not telling anyone what community to be a part of, right? As I posted in the Discord, I don't want you guys to be in a position where it's choose casual wrestling or choose slapping me. We could both coexist. That's not what I'm in here for, right? Y'all are grown. Y'all are adults. Y'all can do what you want to do. But I'm done with it, right? Because I'm not going to align myself. If I'm not welcome in a group and I don't feel welcome in that community, and it's not the people in the community, right? I think there's two people, the guy who runs the podcast, and there's another person in there that I don't think want me in there or have made it very difficult for me to feel welcomed in that Discord, right? And I'm not aligning with fake authenticity and ego-driven brand marketing hoopla. I don't care about all of that, right? I'm just going to keep doing what I always do, right? Raw, real, relevant. That's the theme of what this era is, right? Because this is what I do because I love wrestling. I'm not afraid to shout that. I love pro wrestling. I do. And I want real conversations. Not echo chambers. Not if you don't fit with my vibe, you can't be here. Right? So as I've said, some of the topics on today's show will be in direct response to what he has said on his show. I don't do sneak disses, so I'm going to go ahead and call it out, right? I don't do subliminals. I name names. I've always been told to stand on business, right? So I'll go ahead and just put this warning. If there's someone listening that feel the need to clip this and send it to him, I don't care. Go ahead and do it. His opinion on me doesn't move me in how I operate one bit. Right. But with that being said, 39 minutes into the podcast, let's actually get into some wrestling conversation. Right. So being that we didn't have a Tuesday show, let's talk about Monday Night Raw for a minute, right? I got two big rants talking about Raw. So we'll get to those in a minute, but I got three other parts, right? The first part is I did not like that they did not put Rhea Io versus Roxanne and Guilia at least on Saturday night's main event. Made it feel special, right? This match didn't feel special one bit at all on a Monday Night Raw. This should have been a pay-per-view match or a PLE match. This should have been at least Saturday night's main event because that's what I thought we were getting. I thought we were getting Jay Logan. I thought we were getting this tag match, Rhea, Io, Roxanne, Guilia, and I thought we were, and it looks like we're getting Rollins Breaker versus Punk and Sammy. And so I thought that was going to be like the big 3 matches, and then maybe they'd put this is going to be a 4-match card, by the way, if they follow history. And that they would put a 4th match maybe from a SmackDown, maybe like a Zelina versus Chelsea or something like that. Or Selena and Alexa Bliss versus the Secret Hervis, because they love their multi-man matches in WWE now. Who knows? But I felt like that was going to be where this was going. But it appears that's not the case. They did put this match on Monday Night Raw. It wasn't necessarily a bad match. It just didn't feel important. And I know the argument could be, well, people don't know Roxanne or Guilia. Well, what's a better place to get people to recognize how good they are than to have it on a PLE when the most people are watching? Roxanne and Guilia are, and again, I'm going to have this opinion, and this was one of the opinions I felt like I had to hold back, being part of like trying to pretend to be like the hardcore super casual, and that I couldn't express some opinions, because there are some things the IWC says that are actually very valid. Like if you don't know who Guilia is, you could take yourself to Google. And I know that's a difficult concept for someone who, for some people, but I don't know about you, but I watch wrestling with my phone in my hand, scrolling Twitter to see what the people are thinking. Because I do. Again, I think what makes wrestling fun is that it is a community from around the globe that are watching the same product and discussing it. And so if you don't know who Guilia is, just open your phone, go to whatever preferred internet browser, whether it's Google Chrome or Safari, or if you're one of those people who don't like those and think that, DuckDuckGo or Brave, one of these new ones that were created to keep your data private, whatever it is, right? Go search the internet. Guilia, Guilia, WWE, and it'll pull up everything you need to know about Guilia, right? And I don't think, right now, WWE is also doing a good job presenting her to you, so you're getting a lot of that work done to you. But I think I'm just gonna be honest. If you don't know who Guilia is at this point of how long she's been in WWE, for almost a year now, if you don't know who Guilia is at this point, that's a you problem, right? It's sort of like when people say, well, don't talk about that movie, I don't want any spoilers. Well, if the movie came out a year ago, now at some point it's a you problem that you haven't watched the movie, right? If you don't know about something, that's a you problem, right? If I came into a conversation with someone and they were talking about something that I had zero idea about, right? This happens all the time down here in the South. When I get into conversations with like coworkers or something, and maybe they'll bring up like a conversation, so the white country boys down here that I hang out with at work sometimes, or in different groups, start talking about like, oh man, we're going hunting this weekend, and I just got this gun and got this part and so, and I have zero idea what the fuck they're talking about. Because I know I look like a country boy that goes hunting, but I don't. I don't like being outside in the wilderness. I absolutely despise it. We have companies that do the hunting for us now and package food up, and that I just got to go to the grocery store to pick up, right? And so I have zero idea what they're talking about. So I have two choices. Either join the conversation and sound like a blabbering idiot, or research what the hell they're talking about. Right. Or I can just admit to them, I have no idea what you're talking about. Let me research this and maybe I can give you an opinion. Right. But this idea that you have to be uninformed to be a fan that's casual, that's crazy. Right. Research who Guilia is. Research who Roxanne Perez has been a part of the WWE for like 4 or 5 years at this point. If you don't know who Roxanne is, that's a you problem. Right. And the next thing I want to talk about is Seth Rollins, right? There appears that there's going to be a third man. He's outnumbered now. It looks like it's Jay, Sammy, and Punk, right? And this is obvious what they're doing. Guys, I told you this. When this faction, when Braun Breaker joined, and then the next week Sami Zayn came out, or maybe Sami Zayn came out the same. I don't remember. It's been a minute, right? It's been a minute. I don't have really good memory of a lot of the product and all that. It doesn't really matter, right? But when that happened, when Breaker joined and then Sammy came out, I told you guys from the jump, it wasn't just me. It was guys like Solid Monster and guys like JD who understand wrestling and understand where this is going. And they don't put their fantasy booking wants into the story. They're talking about where the story's going to go based on what we know about storytelling, right? This story is going to be a year-long story, and so what they're doing now is they're laying SummerSlam, or excuse me, Survivor Series. They're laying pieces down to get to Survivor Series. This is why they already booked Survivor Series and told us about it and got us thinking about it WrestleMania weekend, right? So that we could be prepared that they're laying the foundation for Survivor Series right now. And it's going to be Sammy and Punk and Jay, and my assumption Roman Reigns will come back and join this faction. And if they're going, because they didn't mention Survivor Series was War Games and the marketing, it still could be. But if it's going to go back to 5-on-5, if it's Sammy and Jay and Sammy, Jay, Punk, Roman, I can imagine a Cody joining this, and this being Cody's sort of side quest until that world title picture clears back up. Or maybe a Jimmy Uso, because I did see rumors that WWE is considering running it back where the original bloodline, the Roman, Jimmy, Jay, get back together and run it back for one final run. So it could be something like that versus Braun Breaker, Seth Rollins, and who knows what, right? Whoever right? So the question then is who's the third man right now? And a rumor or what the IWC, and I actually like this idea, is saying is that it should be Karrion Kross. I like this idea. Karrion Kross is the most popular merch seller right now in WWE shop. He posted a video. I haven't listened to it yet, but he put in the caption, "Y'all are being heard." So I'm assuming WWE is saying, okay, we need to put Kross on TV and something meaningful. And this would be a wonderful place to put Karrion Kross as sort of not necessarily the front of a faction, but in a serious faction that is in a serious story where he can get serious TV time, and he can help get over someone like a Braun Breaker. Right? I would love if WWE could do this and rehire Baron Corbin, because the Wolf Dog should have never separated. They should have gone to the main roster together, and this would have been a perfect place to reunite them. This would be a perfect place to reunite the Wolf Dog and have Corbin. Like imagine a faction of Corbin, Braun Breaker, Seth Rollins, Karrion Kross, right? I think that would be a pretty decent faction. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Like Corbin was really getting over with me in that NXT run, right? When you made Corbin look serious, he was a threat. But Vince didn't do that. Vince made him play the corny comedy gimmicks, the happy Corbin and the sad Corbin and all of that stuff, right? But Baron Corbin is, even from his early NXT days as the Lone Wolf, was very, very talented and very, very over with a lot of the fan base, right? I like the idea of Karrion Kross though being in this faction. I do 100%. I 100% love that idea. And then the last thing, and this is a shout out to day one supporter Kara, because this is just for you, because I agree with everything you've been saying about this. Bro, Gunther should have choked the fuck out of Michael Cole on Monday night. Right? Gunther should have choked the fuck out of him. So they've really made Gunther look like a fucking dork. right? They really have. So first off, Pat McAfee gets way too much offense at Backlash. Then Gunther shakes his hand and offers him like a show of respect, which again makes him look like a fucking dork. And then he gets on Monday and he's just going to skip right over this whole story. He's going to skip over the fact that Michael Cole cheated and then has been hounding Gunther for cheating and being a bad guy. But Michael Cole was holding his damn foot under the rope. And we're just going to skip over it like it didn't happen. And now Gunther's moving on. And he's waiting for June 9th when he's going to face Logan Paul or Jey Uso, which tells you two things. It's going to tell you two things. That World Heavyweight Championship will not be defended at Money in the Bank. Will not. This also tells me that there might be a potential men's cash-in on June 9th. I really hate how they'd be doing booking like. First off, June 9th is a month and a month away. June 9th is a month away. Why are we booking matches for a month from now? 3 weeks from now. Why are we doing that? Why? It makes no sense to me. Tell me what's happening next week. Why is Gunther not trying to get a rematch next week? Why is he waiting till after not only Saturday night's main event, but he's waiting for after the next PLE? Why? Makes no sense to me. Gunther's really in some shitty booking right now, right? And this all stems from this idea that Jey Uso had to be champion, right? He didn't have to be champion. We get it. Jey Uso is marketing for kids. But guess what? Jey Uso can go be marketing for kids in the Seth Rollins story that he's already a part of, where he's not holding that World Heavyweight Championship hostage. Right? Because that title was supposed to be a workhorse title. And Jey could be a workhorse if he needed to. But they're not going to book him, right? And so I call this style of booking like the legacy booking, right? It's we have the really, really popular guy who the fans like. And again, this is the problem with booking what the fans want. I don't know. Has any of you, like, I'm just going to be honest with you. This episode of Monday Night Raw was really, really, really I just think of one word of watching WWE's product right now, and it's mid. It's not bad. Like, it's watchable, but it's mid. Right? Like, even like NXT, and y'all know how much I've been praising NXT. NXT sort of suffers to me because NXT is sort of missing the top of the card. The mid card's perfect. The bottom of the card's perfect. But they're missing the top of the card, right? You've played the Trick Williams and the Obafemi hand so many times, and that was really the top of your card. And I don't know if they're ready to put Javon Evans there because I think they want Javon Evans to go over Oba SummerSlam weekend. They'll probably run like Great American Bash around that time. And so what they're doing is they're running feuds like Oba versus Miles Bourne, which, let's just take an aside here. Miles Bourne, my dog, what's up, my guy? I hope you get the fucking, no, I'm kidding. I can't hate Miles Bourne. Miles Bourne got a life right now, bro. Bro's in the main event of Battleground, the next NXT PLE, which we will be discussing and predicting next week. So just look at that, what's heading to you next week. We have we're going to do a prediction show on Friday. I'm trying to pull up a calendar. Look, I don't know who controls how apps are labeled in the App Store here for Apple. Can we stop changing categories though? Because I'm trying to find my apps. Anyway, yeah, next Friday is going to be a prediction only show. So we'll predict Battleground, we'll predict Saturday night's main event. I'll even predict AEW's Double or Nothing, which is next Sunday as well. A week from this Sunday, obviously. So 3 shows we'll predict. That'll be the show next Friday. So next Monday, next Tuesday. So Tuesday we'll do a breakdown of SmackDown from today and a breakdown from Raw. And then Friday we'll do predictions. And we will see how that goes. Now that we chase that rabbit, again, I don't like chasing the rabbit holes, because if I chase the rabbit too far, Bray Wyatt's gonna find me. Anyway, let's get into the big 2 rants that I have when it comes to Monday Night Raw. And the first one is this. Rhea Ripley, I get it. She's a superstar. She really is. Like, I'm not trying to be sarcastic when I say that, right? She's a superstar. She looks like a star, carries herself like a star, and she can go in the ring. I think she's been a little sloppy here recently. But it's not consistently sloppy. There's like 2 or 3 matches in the last like 3 months that I could say, not her best, right? But remember though, prior to Bianca being inserted into her versus Io, anytime Rhea got in the ring with Io, right, it just didn't feel right. And then Bianca gets added to the story, and they create magic and have the best match of the year so far. Anyway, Rhea Ripley, right? I get it. Superstar. Looks like a star. Carries herself like a star. She can go in the ring. I just have one question. Just one genuine question that I know will piss off the IWC gooners who love Rhea Ripley because she's hot. And let me tell you, she is attractive. You guys know how I feel. She'd be a lot more attractive without the tattoos all over her body. That's just how I feel. It's a personal preference, right? Not saying she's ugly, not saying any of that. She can do whatever the fuck she wants. I'm just saying for me, right? And the good news is, my opinion doesn't matter because Buddy Matthews is the one that's married to her. So if he likes it, that's all that matters, right? She's attractive, and so this is going to piss off that crowd. It's also going to piss off the casual crowd who thinks that like Rhea Ripley's the greatest in the women's division solely because she's 5'9" and she looks like what they call them, what, Amazons or something like that, right? The tall women, like the Lash Legends and the Chynas and stuff like that, right? Again, I think why the CWC casual crowd likes her is because they like nostalgia booking, and she reminds them the closest of Chyna, and so, which is crazy to me, which is part of the reason why I think Triple H is booking her the way he's booking her. Just personally, that's a personal opinion. I don't have any proof for that, but my question is this. Why is Rhea Ripley always in the title scene? She's either always the champion or she's always the challenger. Think back over the last 2 years. She was either champion or challenger for a majority of that time period. It seems like every Monday Night Raw, it just can't function unless Rhea's somewhere hovering near the world championship. Right? And this isn't even about her being bad, because she's not. She's really good. But we're at a point, but at what point do you admit that there is some serious creative fatigue with Rhea Ripley? Her character arc is basically stuck on loop, right? There's not much character development in Rhea Ripley, by the way. There's no rebuilding. There's no fresh feuds. No real vulnerability, right? And no matter what, she just circles the title like it's gravitationally bound to her leather jacket. Like, meanwhile, we've got these fresh feuds that we're instituting in the last few weeks. You have the Roxanne Perez's. You have the Julias, who are literal box office draws. I definitely agree. And I know the argument could be, well, we're trying to build Roxanne up. We got to build them. We got to build them. We got to build them. They're built. Like I said, Roxanne has 4 years of history in this company. Julia's been here for about a year, and the mainstream wrestling crowd, right? The mainstream wrestling fans know who Julia is. This is why I always say that a majority of wrestling fans are not what we would call casual. There may be more casuals, but they don't make up the majority of wrestling fans. Again, we'll make that distinction at the end, right? I think that's a very important distinction. Wrestling fans know who Julia is. You don't have to build her up. Just Julia versus Io Sky at Money in the Bank would cook. Julia versus Roxanne would cook. Why do we have to have Rhea be the next challenger for Io? Didn't she already have her rematch for losing the title? So why is she here again? It makes zero sense. Like, this isn't about burying Rhea. I'm not trying to bury Rhea, but this is about depth, right? Monday Night Raw is starving for new blood in the women's main event scene, right? You have Liv Morgan off on filming a movie. Why is Raquel not stepping up to Io, right? Or why is Raquel not trying to maybe take out Rhea or something like that, right? The fact that we keep running the same loop with Rhea as either challenger or champion, this tells me one thing, something I've been saying for a while. Triple H does not know what the hell he's doing with this division right now. He doesn't. And no, I'm not going to sit here and spin some kind of ridiculous she's sleeping with the booking team conspiracy. That's lazy, disrespectful, and I think takes away the blame from where it needs to be. Because the issue isn't backroom politics. The issue is lack of good creative. Raw's women's division has never been deeper in talent, but somehow it's never felt more one. The last 2 years have been the most one-dimensional booking for this women's division. You've had, think about it, in 3 years, you've had 3 people really be in this title scene. Rhea, Liv, Io Sky. That's it. That's all you've had for about 2.5 years now. So one-dimensional. But you've got like a dozen women on the roster with breakout potential. And we're being shackled to 3 names. The women's division can't and shouldn't live or die based on whether Rhea Ripley is available or not. Give her some sort of blood feud that isn't for the title. Let her disappear for a bit. And let someone else eat. Do something creatively with Rhea Ripley that doesn't involve a title. The division is on life support. And unless we start rotating new faces in and letting stars actually develop, you're going to look back at this era of women's wrestling and actually realize when we look back in hindsight that you wasted one of the most talented women's rosters ever assembled. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. I may be the only one in this community who listens to this podcast right now. But you're going to look back on this episode in 6-8 months and probably be like, yeah, WETOODEEP was right here. I'm tired of Rhea Ripley, right? I tend to be ahead of the curve when it comes, right? I predicted how bad Jey Uso's reign was going to be, and what exactly it was going to be back in fucking January. So, like, I know I'm tired of Rhea, man. I'm just tired of seeing her always, and I know the IWC for the most part feels the same way. And this transitions into the next thing I have a problem with, and it's the women's mid-card title as well, because that's really been frustrating, right? Because I really wish WWE would utilize the women's Intercontinental Championship better, right? On paper, like when the idea was announced and they announced the title and we're going to run this tournament to crown the first champion, it was a great idea, something that I've been pushing for forever. And it has the potential to elevate the entire women's division. But right now, if we're being honest, it feels like an afterthought. I mean, seriously. Lyra Valkyria defeats Becky Lynch at Backlash. And it does not show up at all on Monday Night Raw that I have any recollection of. She couldn't defend it. She shouldn't call out a new person. You didn't have anything to do with that title. Why couldn't she defend the title on Raw? Or at the very least, announce some sort of qualifying match or number one contender bout to determine her next challenger. There are way too many ways to build anticipation and keep the fans engaged in this title. But instead, they're just letting it sit in the background. Mid-card titles, especially new ones like the women's IC belt, cannot be tied down to what I call legacy feuds. Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, John Cena, those would be considered legacy feuds, right? Or dragged out storylines that last 6 months, like this Becky Lynch Lyra story feels like it's going to be. That kind of booking works for your main event rivalries. But a mid-card belt should be all about the action, the competition, and the momentum. What builds prestige is consistency. Week-to-week action, entertaining matches, and more importantly, opportunity. Think back a few years ago when I ran Queen City Pro Wrestling. Not many people, paid attention to it, and I don't blame you. It wasn't necessarily the best thing to watch. But I had my men's title, my women's title, my tag title, and I had the Queen City Pro Wrestling Television Championship, right? I believe it was what it was called. That mid-card belt for the men, right? And what was I doing when I booked that? You had a title match and a number one contender match for that division every single week. Why? Because that's what the title is supposed to be. The mid-card title is supposed to be your workhorse title. The belt should be a launching pad for rising stars, not just a prop that comes out when creative remembers it exists. Now, I know I've said in the past, titles are props, and I still stand with that. But if you're going to have a prop, use it, right? So the argument is always there's too many titles in wrestling. And my counter argument has always been there's no such thing as too many titles. You just have to use their props. You can have 1,000 of them as long as you use props correctly, right? And so my response to that would be there's not too many titles in WWE. WWE just doesn't know how to use all of their championships. Right? But see, it's not just the IC title. It's the women's US title as well. It's not being booked much better. Right? But here's the thing that really gets me. The WWE women's roster is fucking deep as it's ever been in the history of the company. If you're talking, I'm talking Raw, I'm talking SmackDown, I'm talking NXT. There's talent everywhere. You've got veterans, up-and-comers, powerhouses, high flyers, technical wrestlers, charismatic performers, every style you could want. There's no excuse why we can't have fresh faces fighting for the IC Women's Championship on a regular basis. Imagine a weekly open challenge, right? Imagine some sort of mini tournament. I'm talking names that you could see, like Zoe Stark, Kiana James, being rumored that she's going to return. Throw her right into this, right? Roxanne Perez, Candice LeRae. You can even call up some NXT talent for on a week-to-week basis who are ready for the call-ups. Names like Sol Ruka, Kalani Jordan, JC Jane, Tatum Paxley. A rotation, and there's more that I can name that are ready, right? A rotation of hungry competitors putting on bangers every single week. That would build these mid-card women's championships into something special. The women's IC championship should be the heartbeat of the division. The belt that says, I'm next. It should tell stories through wrestling, not just promos and long, drawn-out feuds. That's what made the old school IC men's championship so great. It was the workhorse title, the belt that showcased pure wrestling, athleticism, and hunger. The same formula works here. So please, WWE, please don't let this title go to waste. You've got the talent, you've got the platform. Now use it. Give us matches, competition, and give this title the shine that it deserves. So overall, my opinion on Raw is that, for the most part, it was pretty mid. It was pretty mid, right? So let's move on. We got a scandal. Happening in the backstage area. Otis on IG. Now, there's arguments about whether this was real or not. But Otis posted a picture of a supposed memo being sent out about WWE now going to be charging for snack cakes and catering, which in and of itself is such a crazy idea. But what's got the internet all over the place, all upset? Yes, fucking snack cakes. Internet's all up in arms because Otis shared a memo from WWE Catering saying that snack cakes were no longer free. Men will get charged $1, women will be charged $1.50. And just like that, the internet went into full meltdown mode. People were yelling, it's sexism, it's discrimination. But at this point, you would think that Vince McMahon brought Katie Vick back on TV. But let's slow it down. Let's use our brains here. This is the meat and potatoes. This is a typical conversation that only would be met with shallow end of the pool discussion about how crazy it is that they're charging for cakes, or this is a stupid news story. No. We're gonna use our brains. We're gonna have actual conversation about this, right? I'm gonna do this by explaining to you all what the memo said, why the difference in price. And it's simple: supply and demand. And honestly, I think WWE's on the right track here. And let me explain. If the data that they had over the last few tours that they mentioned shows that women are consuming more of the snack cakes than men, get this, the cost goes up for the group creating the higher demand. It's not discrimination, it's economics. When one group's demand for a limited resource increases, prices follow. That's how the market works. It's not about gender. It's not about sex. It's not about discrimination. It's about consumption. If you go to a buffet, right? If you go to a buffet with me, you eat one plate, I eat 5 plates. Eventually, the owner is going to be like, you stay too long. Get the fuck now. Eventually, the owner is going to say, man, I got to adjust these prices, or I'm going to put some sort of how many plates you could have limits on it, right? Buffets are not very profitable, by the way, because of this factor, right? It's the same thing here. WWE isn't saying that women are worth less or more. All this is saying is, hey, y'all are eating more snack cakes, so we're going to charge you accordingly. To me, it makes sense. And it's sure, it sounds controversial when you hear, oh, the women have to pay more. But look past the shallow outrage. This is just business. WWE has to manage a budget, has to manage an inventory, and it has to manage some sort of fairness backstage, right? If they were just going to give these cakes out for free and the women are eating all of them and the men don't have the opportunity, that's not fair, right? If the men started clearing out catering, if Otis went backstage and started snacking up on all the entrees and took the whole pan back to his locker room, sure, they'd probably be hit with a surcharge too. But honestly, where I think this comes in, I think this is just outrage culture doing what outrage culture does, because it doesn't think anymore. People don't use common sense, right? It reacts. Outrage culture is reactionary. Here's the bottom line. No one's being oppressed over a fucking Swiss roll. No one's rights are being trampled because of a $1.50 zebra cake. Can we not turn every policy into a protest, please? So shout out to WWE for treating snack cake economics like real world supply chain issues. And if you were backstage and you don't want to pay more, I don't know. Maybe just eat fewer snack cakes. I'm just saying. It's crazy that we're even talking about this. It's crazy. It's crazy that we're even talking about this. It's crazy. Absolutely insane. All right, but now we're going to get a little bit more serious. The wrestling world this week lost Sabu. And there's been a lot of opinions posted about this over the week. There's been a lot of people saying, well, we got to blame Joey. I'm so used to listening to Cornette call him Joey Nutella. That's what I call him. But Joey Janela, I do want to be respectful here and actually pretty serious, because this is a serious conversation that I want to have. People are blaming Joey Janela for doing his final match with Sabu being a barbed wire match, a rope match, and having it be so dangerous, and maybe even going through with the match. There's been some sort of like report saying that he maybe was taking kratom. Is that the name? I don't know. I don't do drugs, so I don't know what the fuck this is. But I want to get past trying to put blame on somebody, right? When a legend like Sabu dies under circumstances like these, tied to like the physical and mental toll of wrestling, because here's my take on it, then I'll go down and explain it, right? I don't think there's anyone to blame for this. I think this is just the result of putting your body through the shit Sabu has put his body through for 30 plus years. Right? There's been rumors that, when I think Sabu's wife just recently passed away and he didn't take it very well. All of that outside drama I don't really care about, right? So some are pointing the fingers at GCW And I really do get it, right? GCW has become one of the main faces in modern deathmatch wrestling. They market themselves as edgy, gritty, pushing boundaries for the culture, right? As they would say, right? But when a man like Sabu, known for putting his body through hell, is still being booked this late into his life, the question has to be asked: did anyone check to see if he was okay? Did anyone make sure he was in the proper state of mind? Was his body actually able to perform? Because let's just be honest. From my understanding, GCW isn't really known for having a rigorous medical protocol. There's not much drug testing, I would imagine they would do. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to try to speak for Brett Lauderdale. I don't know what they do. Right? But because that's not unique to just GCW. I don't want to call GCW out like they're negligent. That's the indie wrestling by itself. There's plenty of indie promotions that don't drug test. Now, I'm going to take this time to let you know that I promise you, if WETOODEEP ever came into money and he could pay off his bills and they could start a wrestling promotion and we got Slap and Meat Pro Wrestling, you better believe, I'm not even joking when I say this. I care way too much about performer safety. I would be drug testing multiple times a weekend if I had to, right? If I booked you, right, and the show's on Saturday, my expectation is you're there Friday. And see, this is why I would pay you well, right? Because that would cut your bookings for Friday nights, and I get that. So I would pay you well, right? But if my show's on Saturday, you're going to be there Friday night. I'm going to drug test you when you get there Friday night. Then we're going to get to the show Saturday afternoon, because I'm only going to run night shows. I feel like those are better, right? So then we'll get to the building Saturday at noon, and you're going to be drug tested again. And we'll check on you. And if I feel at any point during the Friday and Saturday that weekend that you're not in the right shape of mind, that I feel like you're on drugs, that you're hurt or anything, I'm pulling you from the card. Because if we're putting people in the ring, you're putting lives and their health on the line. As promoters, you owe it to them to make sure they're protected even from themselves. But again, like I said, here's the hard truth. As much as we want to place the blame on Joey Janela or GCW or on a booker or on the deathmatch scene, and I'm gonna break down why I don't like deathmatch wrestling here in a minute. What this ultimately comes down to is the brutal cost of the grind that Sabu chose to put himself through for decades. This man gave everything to the business. His body was his canvas, and he carved a legacy with barbed wire, broken glass, and flaming tables. He's a legend for a reason. But legends still bleed. Legends still age. And legends, like anyone else, can suffer in silence, masking chronic pain and trauma under a veil of toughness. That kind of wrestling, the hardcore deathmatch, ultra-violent style, it doesn't just wear on your body. It absolutely devours it. Which is why I've always been so vocal about my stance on deathmatch wrestling. I'm against it, point blank. Like, I respect the passion. I respect the performers. And I know for some, it's a tradition. But I can't, in good conscience, support a style that glorifies self-destruction. I'm pro performer safety. Even if that means the match is less bloody, less shocking, less extreme. Because what are we really doing here? Are we here to cheer for human beings or for car crashes, right? It's sort of the same thing with, like, at some point during the Roman Empire, and I love to bring that up sometimes. During the Roman Empire, gladiator matches were 100% originally designed to be scripted performances, not fights to the death. But at some point in that culture, there was a bloodlust for people to die, and so the Colosseum literally became a pool of blood at times when they would kill. Then they became battles to the death. Then they became, we're going to starve the lions and any criminal that, if the Romans weren't crucifying them, they were feeding them to the lions. Because there was a bloodlust in that culture. And that's what I'm seeing here, is there's this bloodlust in wrestling that loves deathmatch, right? But are we here for bloodlust or for entertainment? Because I don't find blood and guts and gore and all of that stuff entertaining. I'm just going to be completely honest. I don't care how high the pop is that someone gets when they get thrown through a pane of glass, or how loud the crowd gets when a light tube explodes across someone's face. What is the cost of the pop? What's the long-term toll? Is a 10-minute moment, is your 15 minutes of fame because of violence, is it worth a lifetime of surgeries, possible drug addictions, chronic pain, and yes, even early premature death? To me, it's not. Wrestling doesn't have to be sanitized or boring to be safe. You could tell incredible, emotional, edge-of-your-seat stories without turning the ring into a crime scene. I'm not asking everyone to wrestle like it's 1985. 1985. Anyway. But there has to be a line. There has to be a balance. And really, above all, there has to be care. Real care for the people behind the characters. Because when the crowd leaves, when the lights go off, when the last beer is sold, the men and women in the rings have lives in these broken bodies. They still have to fight that battle of chronic pain. Sabu's death isn't just a tragic loss. I believe we could use this as a wake-up call, not just to promotions, but to fans, to bookers, to the wrestlers themselves. Guys, understand, wrestlers are never going to pull themselves from a match. They're prideful, they're egotistical, and a lot of times they damage they do a lot of self-detrimental actions, right? The culture has to change. It can't just be about surviving just one more match. If I could just do one more match, right? It can't be about that. It has to be about living beyond the ring. So let's honor Sabu. Not just by remembering his legacy, because definitely we need to do that. Bro definitely deserves that respect. Not just by remembering his legacy, but by doing better for the next generation of wrestlers coming up behind him. Making sure that the current wrestlers entering the wrestling business don't have to go through the same trauma and addiction that the current and past generations did. That they have a wrestling industry that is safe for them to participate in. As fans, we have to do better. As promoters, they have to do better. But guys, as wrestlers, you have to do better. Think about after your career is done. Do you want to be one of these old men sitting in wheelchairs having to do DDP yoga just to stand up? Think about it. The medical arena, the medical arena, and the advances in medicine just in the last 50 years to help the body recover is absolutely insane. Y'all got to, wrestlers, promoters, fans, we have to think about what these real life people behind the character will have to go through when they step away from the business. At the end of the day, I'm pro performer safety. All right. We finally got to the point of probably where we're going with this, right? One more real thing real quick that I want to talk about. Naomi is being rumored as being really favored by the IWC for winning Money in the Bank. And I'm going to tell you, as much as I try to convince you guys that I think it's going to be Roxanne, I'm here for a Naomi Money in the Bank run here. I'm all for it. Because if we really think about this, right, her heel run, perfect, phenomenal. From the music, the attire, she's reinvented herself with some edge, clicking on every level. Right? Don't get me wrong, I still love Roxanne Perez. I think she should be it, personally. If we're talking about story, I think we got some cinema cooking if it's Bianca. Because there's some layers that Naomi holding that briefcase adds, right? I think this comes in picture with, like, we have Jade Cargill in this title scene against Tiffany. So picture this, right? So Nia's getting the match. What, a Saturday night's main event? So picture this. Jade Cargill earns a title shot at SummerSlam. It's a big stage. It's a big moment. Tiffany Stratton, Jade Cargill. Crowd is hype. She's just about to have her crowning moment. The match is going and it's beat down. Jade's beating the shit out of Tiffany. Tiffany's beating the shit out of Jade. Maybe Jaded just got hit. Tiffany just got hit with Jaded. Jade's about to have her crowning moment. And boom. Naomi cashes in. Stops Jade cold in her tracks. Steals the moment. Hijacks the story. Continues her betrayal of Jade. Continues this feud. Wins the championship. And now you have Jade chasing Naomi for the championship. That's some drama right there. And you know what else this does? It elevates the briefcase. It makes it more than just a prop, because it's been getting pretty stale here recently, right? It becomes part of the narrative. Naomi becomes and continues to be the villain in the rise of Jade Cargill. So yes, Roxanne to me is a great option. But Naomi? She brings some kind of story with it. And if WWE's really ready to lean into that, because then there's the Bianca situation. And you could then book this into a triple threat at Survivor Series. Bianca, Jade, and Naomi. Right? I think, I don't have a lot to say about that, but I do like the idea of Naomi being Money in the Bank. Her and Roxanne are my two choices right now, right? And here's why. I don't see anyone cashing in on Io. I don't. But either way, if it is Io or if it's Tiffany, they're both face champions. So you have to have well, let me run that back. I think if Roxanne wins, she'll cash in on Io. If Naomi wins, she'll cash in on Tiffany, right? But what I was trying to get to is you have to have a heel Money in the Bank because both of your champions right now are faces. So we're now gonna get into. We have a 4-part react to that type. We're going to talk about Dominic Mysterio, Kenny Omega, Will Osprey, and then we'll do our final little segment on here in a minute. Right, so Dominic Mysterio on the Intoxicados podcast, which I've never heard of, but like I said, there's a podcast for everything. Explains why he doesn't do too many spectacular high-flying moves. And this is his quote. He says, if you go out there and wrestle 100 times and you do a moonsault 90% of the time, people are going to expect it. But if I give it to them 10% of the time, when I do hit that moonsault, everyone's going to be like, man, did you see him hit that moonsault? It's going to mean more. Bro, Dom just fucking gets this business, man. Dom gets this business. Give him a fucking world title. I'm not even kidding. I'm glad he's IC champion. I hope this elevates him to the next level of being world champion someday. But Dom just fucking gets it. If you do your acrobatic shit every single match or every other match, and you do the same shit, and then everyone copies you and does it, it doesn't mean anything. These high-flying moves don't mean anything anymore because they're constantly being done time and time and time and time again. Dominic gets it. He understands ring psychology. Dominic Mysterio just gets this business. Just gets it. 100%. 100%. I love that. Bro, Dominic there's nothing more I can say other than he just fucking gets this business. All right, so now we're going to compare that to the two other guys. We're going to talk about Will Osprey first, right? Will Osprey, I don't know what show he was on when he said this, but he says the following quote, talking about WWE. We smoke them in every field of wrestling. Like we're just better. Bruv, I respect every single one of them there. They all know what they're doing. They're great at their job. They understand getting people on their feet. But we are so much better of a wrestling company than them. And so here's what I got to say to Will Osprey. The fuck are you talking about? While we're on this, let's go ahead and give Dynamite some praise this week. They finally beat NXT again in the ratings. Finally up there. But I think part of that's what I was saying with NXT is they lost their top of the card. Not a lot of people are interested, right? Not trying to make an excuse. I think it's bad booking that NXT is doing that is costing them viewers. I thoroughly do believe that. But anyway, back to Osprey here. Bruh, the fuck are you talking about? There's not a single part of this business that AEW does better than WWE right now. From the presentation, the storytelling, the in-ring wrestling, it's not. Dynamite has been boring the last 4 weeks. Building up to this Double or Nothing event has been boring as shit. Boring. With all capital letters, capital B, capital O, capital R, capital I, capital N, capital G. Boring. Nothing's going on. You have 2 matches that I know of that are planned for this PLE. That's or pay-per-view. That's next week. And they're your finals of your tournaments. The fuck are we doing, dog? There's no hype here. Which tells me I need you to have a card ready for next Friday so I can predict this shit. And I know they're going to put some matches on the card on Saturday next week. They're going to do some last minute additions to the card on Collision next Saturday so that they can stand out against Saturday night's main event. I know exactly what you're going to do, Tony Khan. But Will, what are you talking about? I don't really have anything else to say, but what are you talking about? Kenny Omega then says on the accessibility of influencers and celebrities in modern day professional wrestling, Kenny Omega has this to say. He says, I've said it before. I don't know if I've ever said it publicly or not. But I mean, I think we're headed on a path where it's like a couple of WrestleManias down the road. The main event's going to be Logan Paul versus Mr. Beast. It's like, what is the wrestling acumen? How many miles have they put into it? It's like, doesn't matter. This is the process of evolution. And so here's my response to Kenny Omega. If we do get a Mr. Beast versus Logan Paul, or an IShowSpeed versus Logan Paul, there's a purpose for that. The purpose is to get that audience to WrestleMania to watch. Understand that the rest of wrestling, though, the rest of mainstream, what we would call pro wrestling, the AJ Styles and stuff like that, that's going to be on the card. But you need the Logan Pauls and that celebrity match to get people into the arena, right? So I have no problem with Logan Paul being in the business and having more celebrities involved in I have no problem at all with that, right? I don't really know what Kenny Omega is trying to insinuate here. But I just don't see a problem. All right, so we finally have gotten to the main event of the evening. So I'm going to make and defend this argument. Being a WWE only viewer does not make you a wrestling fan. It makes you a WWE fan. I want to clear something up. Some of you may say, bruh, this is just a battle of semantics. And let me clear it up. Yes, this is a battle of semantics. Here's why. Words matter. Words have definitions. Words mean things. At the core of this discussion is the idea that words are not just labels. They shape how we think, how we communicate, and how we understand reality. When we blur the meaning of a word, we blur the meaning of the thing itself. And in this case, we're focusing on the word fan, specifically wrestling fan. The dictionary defines a fan as an enthusiastic devotee of something. That is someone who doesn't just casually consume a thing. And I really want to be careful with that, because you can be a casual fan. Again, there's a spectrum, but understand that me using casually here means that, like, I don't use the thing a lot, right? So here's how we'll define this, right? If you watch wrestling multiple times a week, I don't necessarily, I don't know if I really like me using that word casual there, but it is what it is, right? It's not someone who just casually consumes a thing, right? That doesn't make you a fan, right? In a way, casual and fan are, being a casual fan is kind of an oxymoron, by the way, because being casual means you're not devoted to it, but then fan means enthusiastically devoted, right? So it's kind of an oxymoron. But anyway, they appreciate, right? Fans, enthusiastic devotees, appreciate, value, and seek it out in different forms, right? And be honest with you, I would put myself in a category of I'm probably just a WWE fan, or I'm on the edge, right? Because I do like some independent wrestling and stuff like that. But, right? So if someone only watches WWE, right, and has no knowledge of, or what's even worse, they refuse to acknowledge any other wrestling styles, promotions, or traditions, then they're not being an enthusiastic devotee of wrestling. They're an enthusiastic devotee of WWE. That distinction matters. Because when people say, I'm a wrestling fan, but then only accept WWE as legitimate wrestling, they're not just they're not just mislabeling themselves, they're shaping the conversation in a way that diminishes anything outside of the WWE. Even if they're doing this unintentionally. That kind of language silences the rest of the industry. It ignores entire cultures, styles, histories, and performers who've given their life to wrestling in forms that don't fit the WWE mold. Part of this conversation around this is I want to take someone like AJ Styles. I do. I want to take someone like AJ Styles, who has for so long gave his life to this industry outside of WWE for like 20 years. And we have people who are just WWE only. If it doesn't happen in WWE, it doesn't matter. That will say that AJ Styles is not one of the greatest wrestlers to ever wrestle, one of the greatest performers to ever perform inside a squared circle. That is absolutely asinine. Now, I'm going to be honest. I never watched AJ Styles in his heyday, but I will respect the grind and the work that it took, right? Because some of these people, their favorite wrestlers in WWE now, Seth Rollins. Well, he was Tyler Black. Go look him up in ROH. Kevin Owens. Well, he was Kevin Steen. Go look him up. Doing the same shit today that he was 20 years ago in ROH. El Generico, the original El Grande Americano. El Generico. Sami Zayn. Go look him up. Does none of that matter? No, it absolutely matters. And I think it's hyper disrespectful to disrespect the wrestlers who have given their life to this industry. To say, well, you didn't do it at the top of the mountain. So you weren't a real wrestler, or you didn't matter. I think that's highly disrespectful, right? It would be like saying you're and you hear this a lot of stuff. I'm a fan of all music. I'm a music fan. But then when I hand you the aux cord, the only thing on your playlist is pop. And then and then when I ask you, I thought you like, hey, where's the jazz? Where's the metal? Where's the hip hop? Where's the country music? And then you say, oh, no, I don't like any of that. All of that's not real music, right? You're not just misrepresenting your music interest. You're not a music fan. It's not right. You're a pop music fan, right? And not only are you misrepresenting your interest, you're disrespecting the diversity of the art form known as music. And language has power. I don't want to be like, I don't want to, make this super religious, but from my religious tradition and what I believe, God spoke and the universe was sculpted into what we see, right? And then that same tradition would teach us in its holy book that words have power and that we need to tame the tongue because we could build up or destroy with our words. I do believe words have power. Language has power. And when we misuse it, we distort reality and exclude what doesn't fit into our narrow definition. That is why this isn't just semantics. It's about intellectual honesty and cultural respect. If we want to have real conversations about wrestling, about what it is, where it's going, and who shapes it, we need to define terms and use the right words. We need to say what we mean. A person who only watches WWE isn't less than or lesser, but they're not a wrestling fan in the full definition of the word. They're a brand loyalist, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a brand loyalist. I prefer Pepsi over Coke, but I'm not going to deny that Coke exists. I am a brand loyalist. I will actively seek out Pepsi over Coke, 100%. And that's fine, as long as we call it what it is. Because words mean things. And if we want to be clear thinkers and honest communicators, we've got to use words responsibly. Look, there's nothing wrong with loving WWE. Nothing. Not saying it's wrong. It's the most popular wrestling company in the world. It's accessible. It's polished. It has history. Let's be honest. If that's all you watch, your devotion isn't to wrestling as an industry, but to a brand. Now, listen, I don't want this to be misunderstood, right? I'm not saying you have to watch everything. You don't need to keep up with New Japan and AEW and GCW and AAA and Stardom and your local indie promotion. You don't even have to like those styles. I'm not saying that. But if you refuse to acknowledge that those parts of the wrestling world exist or even matter for that instance, then you're not an enthusiastic devotee of wrestling. You're a devotee of WWE. Wrestling is a machine, right? It's like a machine. WWE may be the CPU, the computer that drives the conversation and reaches the widest audience. But a CPU alone isn't the whole system. You still need a motherboard. You still need memory. You still need power. You still need cooling. You need all of those components. The indie scene develops future talent. Japan pushes a technical mastery. Lucha brings tradition and spectacle. Death matches, even though I just shit on them, right? Don't like them, but they're still a part of the business. Joshi, British rounds, they're all part of this machine. If you ignore or reject those parts, you're not supporting the machine. You just like a singular part of it. If someone tells me, if I walk up to someone and like, hey, bro, I'm coming to your city today. Let's go meet up real quick. Let's go get some donuts. And that person says, man, I love donuts. Cool. And I'm like, cool, we'll meet up, right? And then I meet up at the house and I bring him some Dunkin', right? The best donut, right? I bring him some Dunkin'. And I'm in the South, so that person may kick me out. No, I'm kidding. People like Dunkin' around here now. But if I bring them Dunkin' and then they respond with, bruh, not those. I only eat Krispy Kreme. They don't have a love for donuts. They love Krispy Kreme. They're not a fan of the food. They're a fan of the brand. And again, it's totally fine. Not saying that's bad. Preferences are valid. But let's stop mislabeling brand loyalty as industry devotion. If you only watch WWE and you reject the rest of the wrestling world, you're not a wrestling fan in the full sense of the word. You're a WWE fan. That's okay. All I'm asking is you don't confuse the two. This isn't a bad faith argument. This isn't gatekeeping. This is just logical, honest, critical thinking. Because as I've said, at the end of the day, words mean things. It's sort of like when I introduce myself, right? Y'all see the Boston flag above my head if you're watching on video. When I introduce myself, I don't introduce myself as an NFL fan. I don't even introduce myself as a football fan, right? Or a baseball or a hockey or a basketball. No, I am a Boston sports fan. I am a Patriots fan. On a Sunday, During football season, I will tune on the Patriots game, and that is it. I don't watch the 49ers. I don't watch the Cowboys, partially because they would put me to sleep. I don't watch the Eagles or the Bills or the Jets or any of the other teams in the NFL. I watch the Patriots. And when the Patriots are not playing, I don't watch. And so I am perfectly fine with saying I am a New England Patriots fan. When it comes to college football, I am a Clemson Tiger fan. That's it. I don't sit here and watch App State. I don't watch Penn State. I don't watch Alabama. I don't watch Your Sister fucking University. I don't watch any of that shit. I watch Clemson, and that's it. Because I'm a Clemson Tiger fan. All I'm asking is for y'all to be realistic with who you're a fan of. Are you a fan of wrestling as an industry, or are you a fan of a brand? Because there's not a problem with doing that. There's nothing wrong with saying, yeah, bro, I love WWE. There's nothing wrong with that. Right? Right? And so some people might push back on this and say, well, wrestling is literally in World Wrestling Entertainment. So if I watch WWE, I'm watching wrestling. And sure, at the surface level, which is where a lot of these conversations stand, because they don't go deeper than the shallow surface, that sounds like a solid point. But when you get to the deep end and you break it down, you do what I say, you push your logic and your reasoning to its furthest conclusion. A lot of people don't know how to do that. When you do that, you come to this conclusion. Just because the word wrestling is in the name of WWE doesn't mean that WWE defines or encompasses the entire wrestling industry. Pizza is in the word Pizza Hut, right? And if you were to say that Pizza Hut defines Italian cuisine because it has the word pizza in the name, that's crazy. Is it technically pizza? Sure. But is it all that pizza can be? Absolutely not. WWE is one company, one brand, with a particular style, particular presentation, and a particular philosophy on what sports entertainment is supposed to look like. But that style isn't universal. It's a carefully crafted sports entertainment model that blends wrestling with drama, corporate branding, and mass market appeal. And again, that's not a bad thing. But it's just one version of what wrestling could look like. Pro wrestling as a global art form includes everything from Japanese strong style, lucha libre, catch wrestling, shoot style, and British technical wrestling. It exists in the bingo halls, in the arenas, in the high school gyms, in the Tokyo Dome where Dave Meltzer creams his pants every single time he's there. WWE is part of that world, but it is not the whole world. So yes, WWE contains wrestling, but watching it does not automatically make you a fan of wrestling as a whole. It makes you a fan of a product that uses wrestling as its core mechanic. And that's an important distinction. Again, it goes back to the definition of fan, an enthusiastic devotee. If you're only devoted to WWE, then by definition, you are not a wrestling fan. You're a WWE fan. And that's okay. But let's stop acting like WWE alone defines what wrestling is. Because it doesn't. It's a major part of the machine, but it's not the machine itself. So with that, I appreciate you all listening, watching. If you could like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, share this podcast. Go buy some merch if you want to. All I ask is you leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. That hits us in the algorithm there. If you're watching, or excuse me, listening on Spotify or any of those audio apps, follow, subscribe, whatever the terminology on your app is. Leave us a review. That gets us in the algorithms that way. Until Tuesday, I'm WETOODEEP. This is the Slapping Me Wrestling Podcast. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Enjoy SmackDown tonight if you're going to watch. Enjoy Collision tomorrow if you're going to watch. We'll see you on Tuesday.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride. AEW, WWE, we're always on side. From fantasy booking to baddies that slay. Slapping me wrestling every Tuesday.